Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. It's warm in Buffalo, but it's cold in my basement. As you can tell, it's 85. It's 85 degrees outside, and I'm shivering down here. Anyway, we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
So let's talk about robo-umps because, again, I think people, especially in this area, but also, I guess, soccer fans, and I didn't watch any of the soccer games, but I guess there was a missed call there. And people here in Philly are, they're on the radio and they're like, these calls are horrible. This umpire is only calling 66% of strikes. And, if this were me 15 years ago, I'd have been trumpeting for the robo umps too, but I'm not now. Because a lot of times I see the error in trying to get everything 100% right too. There is an error in that. We always say, you got to get it right. Yeah, but at what cost? So I still find the umpires amusing. I still think they're a very important part of the game. When Aaron Boone mocked the umpire the other day and even mocked his strikeout call and then got tossed, you can't do that with a robo-ump. Those things will be lost forever if the robo-umps are there. And I'm willing to make that trade-off and keep the regular umps, Kev.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think that's part of the game, although we should point out that Boone has now said publicly that he thoroughly regrets his.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. He gave us that entertainment that moment.
He did, but he just said he was very embarrassed about his behavior, and he just wishes he wouldn't have done that. But no, I mean, your point is well made. I mean, part of baseball tradition is, getting into it and getting in the umpire's face, and and we've all seen representations of sometimes they just want to make a point and they're out there and asking you, don't take this personally. I just need to yell at you. My team needs a kid, a boot in the butt, that kind of thing. But the amazing thing is when you have the robot, you don't even know that they're there because, I saw the minor league one. I've told people this before, but I didn't even know it was being called robotically because it's in the ear of the umpire. The umpire is still there.
Yeah, I know.
So it is kind of weird. So the umpire will be there to yell at, but what he's going to do is,
right. He's going to be like, not my call. He's not going to care.
Right. Don't yell at me. It's the damn robot that's doing it.
Yeah. So it will be interesting. I guess it comes down to, I mean, we've said many times on this show that we just want to get it right. Well, if you want to get it right, you're going to have to go to that. But sometimes it's like one of the things in the soccer was the famous goal that eliminated the U.S. I mean, they got it right, using the replay, but it was a millimeter over the line. It wasn't even an inch over the line. You could barely see anything, but it's the right call, but it's heartbreaking if you just did it on what you saw. You might have not have said that was a goal. So it does change the game.
I agree with Matt in the chat room where he says he doesn't want computers to run in the game. That's a part of it, but also what's a part of it is for over 100 years, baseball knew, hey, the National League had this strike zone, the American League had this strike zone, and we all were okay with it. We all knew. We also knew when we played, the umpire might get one wrong once in a while. And you know what? That's all a part of the game. That's part of the strategy to me.
Well, okay, and I can't remember who the umpire was, but remember the Levon Hernandez game in the NLCS where the strike zone was as wide as a Mack truck. I mean, that's the point of ridiculousness. And I was watching the Yankees White Sox game. Laz Diaz was the umpire, and he was calling it for both sides, but he was calling easily a foot outside of the strike zone for right-handed batters. He was calling them strikes, and he was calling them consistently. Now,
see, that's all I care about.
Yeah,
if you're consistent to both sides, and that's your strike zone, that's your interpretation of it, I'm fine with it. I never yell at that.
And I think there was something to what you were saying, Kev, about like an umpire or that the manager with Boone, sort of expressing himself and maybe getting thrown out of the game on purpose. Maybe that's the reason he regretted it later on, because his team left 28 28 players on base, and they scored 1 run against that crappy White Sox team that we saw a couple weeks ago. That's even worse now because they traded half the team that we saw. So that's how bad they were, and they scored 1 run with Garrett Cole on the mound. So.
Well, I'll tell you, it's really the problem we have with umpires is, just as analytics has overrun baseball, it's overrun officiating as well. Like, we now know, all the analysts now at the start of the game tell you what the umpire's strike zone is.
Yes.
They've all studied it and they've had it. Now, that's the way baseball has always been. Like, you knew the umpires that had a pitcher-friendly strike zone, and you knew the ones that were hitter-friendly, and you adjusted your game accordingly. So it's not like you didn't know what was going on. But one thing that has happened, and I've seen umpires talk about, like the pressure is now off them. Like they understand that there is a safety for them. So because they want to get it right. And if they miss it, they're happy. Like a lot of people thought, well, they're embarrassed by that. And based on what I've read, they're not embarrassed. They're happy that someone is, correcting whatever error, because they don't want to be responsible for changing the game. They want to get it right. So, especially the calls on the base now, you can make that flamboyant call, and if it's a close call, and umpires still are proven to be right much of the time. But it's just, on those bang calls, it's okay now if they blow it because someone's going to correct it for them. So there's no simple answer for this, but some of the grand tradition of the game is the interaction between players and umpires and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm still okay with the robot behind the plate because the umpire will still be there.
The only other thing, there's one more facet, Kev. So players many times will be non-confrontational, but ask the umpire, was that a ball or a strike?
Yeah.
And he might even tell him why. Now they're not going to tell him why because it's someone else calling it. He's just going to say that was a ball or that was a strike.
Yeah, they are going to tell him for sure.
They'll tell him what it is, but not why.
Well, but now they'll actually have a true understanding of they'll have an accurate call. You know what I mean? Like the umpire may say it's a strike, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens if they go to that. So
well, I'll just say this: I'm sure that the umpire who blew the call on the Armando Galarraga perfect game wishes there was replay and wishes there was a robot ump because that would have prevented that egregious error from being done. But anyway, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, August 9th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I see Steve Cohen is in our chat room, and the only thing I would say is invite me to have a little chat with you one-on-one at the stadium.
Kevin Allen, Detroit Hockey Now. Is Steve Cohen related to you?
No, he's not. But, this one says he's the Steve Cohen. It has his picture, so I'm assuming it's him.
Well, we just have many members of the Cohen. First it was Michael Cohen. Now we have Steve
Cohen, Stephen Cohen. They're all, they're all related somehow via DNA, but we're not related.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, where we get the year right. When I'm the host, we get the year right.
That's a low bar for this show.
Okay, let's start. Let's start with the news. Now, I posted this little video, and it's applicable to anything when it comes to the Arizona Coyotes. I put the video of Al Pacino from the movie Godfather 3, where it says, once I thought I was out, they pull me back in. And that is what the Arizona Coyotes are trying to do to us all over again, because the report came out today that the Arizona Coyotes have submitted a letter of intent to buy 41 acres of land in Mesa, Arizona, Kev, for the purposes of potentially building an NHL-size arena to keep the franchise in the Phoenix area. And I want to vomit. But let's
yeah. Well,
but I'll go on afterward.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all know everyone's position on this. But the thing that was bothersome about that is the arena that they're proposing wouldn't be done to 26, 27.
Yes.
So now we're kind of kicking that can farther down the road. And it looks like they have, the further complication, at least in my mind, if I understand this correctly, and we don't get perfect information because I think it sort of changes daily, but ownership of the Coyotes doesn't really want to sell the team. So even though I think there seems to be a general safety valve plan to move it to Salt Lake City, he doesn't really want to sell it. And, I'm also hearing that he also, the person there in Salt Lake wants to buy this team at a discount. And I don't think Marulo wants to sell it at a discount.
That's the crux of it, Kev. It's not that he's putting on the pretenses of, I don't want to sell the team. But in a story that we're going to talk about later, they're the least, in terms of franchise value, they're at, I think, 600 million or something like that. They're the lowest ranked franchise value in the league. And he sees, a team going for $900 million, a team that's, been, so that's, I'll bet you anything, if he gets offered $900 million from Salt Lake, he's selling right away.
Yeah. And it may be worth 900 in Salt Lake.
Right.
Because, one of the reasons why it's not worth much is because it's in Arizona and they don't have an arena and things aren't going well. But, the precedent is well established, as anybody who has watched what's been going on with Snyder in the NFL and the Clippers in the NBA and even the Phoenix Suns. You could make an owner sell.
Yes.
That's certainly, this is, a collective group that, you get voted in or out. But that doesn't mean there wouldn't be a lawsuit. And it wouldn't be delayed even longer. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. That, I know some folks that work at the Coyotes, and they believe they've got a chance to get it up and running. So we'll see what happens here. But I think when that vote went down, I think everyone had a sense that the league had finally sort of said, look, if you can get it together quickly, then we'll consider it. But otherwise, we've got to move on.
Yeah, I will say this. The first thing I noticed when I clicked on the link was, no cash has changed hands.
Correct.
It's just a promise. And
right.
Promises are great in business until they're not. The second thing is, and this will give credit to Ted Starkey, who's the friend of the show. He said, there's a great announcement considering tickets are going on sale on August 11th for next year.
Right.
You know what? I hate to be that jaded guy, but there is some sense to that, Kev, where you're creating some excitement right before tickets go on sale.
Look over here, folks.
Really, it's not even it's just a direct attempt to tell them that the team will be here beyond next season. Right. Because that discourages. You don't want to watch a team that's going to be gone the following year. So.
Yeah, but the thing that's interesting is, if you remember, when they were slated to go to Mullet Arena, Arizona State University, it was a 3-year deal. Now, according to this article, there is an option for an additional year. First of all, I don't think the NHL is going to sign up for 3 more years in a 5,000-seat arena. And second of all, we heard whispers of the PA having a big problem with the conditions in that arena and the quality of the locker room and things of that nature. It's one thing if it's a 1-year patch. It's another if you're going to be there for 3 more years.
You know what? I would have agreed with you rather easily on this a year ago. Now I'm like, the NHL may agree to this, and I don't think it's smart, but they just might, Kev. I mean, I can't say they won't.
Yeah, they do want that market, and as soon as they leave town, they'll be, working on a plan to get back in that market.
Right.
And it could end up like that. What if you went to Marulo and said, look, we got to get this team out of town now, but you go ahead and work on that arena and we'll give you a pledge that, you'll get an expansion team. But, he's not going to want to spend $1 billion to get a expansion. So that's the hole in that, unless there was some sort of agreement that he would be grandfathered in, that he could get the team for whatever he sells it for or whatever. So anything could worked out, but I mean, it's just gone on too long, and I hate to I'm sure the PA would dread getting involved in this, because you don't know. You're messing, like there are people who, we had one here in Detroit who came to town and had played for the team last year, Fisher, and he loved playing in Arizona, loved the arena. And he just said, it was just so much fun. I hated to leave. I had a wonderful time there. So that's what the problem that the PA will have is that, there are people who that disrupts them. They like being in Arizona for whatever reason. So, it's never easy, but I'm sure they get some complaints from the visiting.
I'm sure.
Yes.
I mean, this is to explain like how far that the PA has to fight for its players. In the CBA, there's even a provision about what the thread count of the towels have. That's a true story.
It has to be like Egyptian cotton, 300.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it goes that far, but in other words, you've got to provide reasonable towels for big athletic men. You can't just get. They've got to be hotel style towels. You can't just go down to your local Target and get the cheapest towels and throw 50 in there and call it good.
So what you're saying is it's not going to be pillows from the My Pillow guy.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but I'm just making a point. Not that there's not that that's wrong, because you're dealing with elite athletes. They they need to have whatever it is that they're accustomed to.
I have an elite pillow, so I understand that part of it. So I get it.
Yeah. So, but I'm just saying that's how far they take it. So they do have to take if the visiting team says we go in there and we don't have room to put on our gear, we're cramped, whatever. We don't have a training room, to treat our players. Those are concerns they have to take seriously.
I'm always fascinated when these surveys or articles come out regarding the valuation of franchises, and another one has come out from Sportico, the periodical. What they did was they took the value of franchises from the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, and MLS. And for the first time, I don't ever remember MLS franchises being mixed in there, but the league is blowing up and if you can tell, some MLS franchises are actually worth more than NHL franchises, which I think has to be a shot across the bow to Gary Bettman. But first thing first on this list is, boy, you can tell the NFL is king, because the Dallas Cowboys are $9.2 billion. They're worth more than the Yankees, who are the third ranked franchise. The Golden State Warriors are ranked ahead of the Yankees, which I find hard to believe, but the NBA is is really sort of shooting up there.
It's because of the interest in China. That's what it is. Is
it? Okay. But
that's what I think it is.
All right. Of the top 40 franchises, there are 32 NFL teams, and all of them are in the top 40. The only franchises in the top 40 that are not NFL teams are Golden State, the Yankees, the Knicks, the Lakers, the LA Dodgers, the Red Sox, and the Cubs. That's it. So everything else is that. Even the least valuable NFL franchise, which is Cincinnati, is worth more than the Boston Celtics, which is pretty bizarre. But
again, I think it's because of what the league's worth with the NFL and what their deal is for TV and what they split.
Right.
That's all. That's guaranteed money, right? So that's all part of their worth.
Right.
With Golden State, it's, I forget now the name of the 3-point shooting guy.
Oh, Stephen Curry.
If Curry's got out of there, their value drops. It probably goes in half. But with Steph Curry there, it's massive. So you look at that. You look at the Red Sox. It's Fenway Park. It's what Fenway Park is. Nothing to do with the team or the players. It's Fenway Park. So that's what I'm looking at.
I don't know if the like the building or the arena or the stadium is factored into the franchise.
I think it is, because I know the Red Sox own theirs, and they're redeveloping the area around it.
Sure.
This is all I think just based on revenue potential, revenue creation potential. And for example, and I've brought this up before, but I think it's a kind of a fun fact that really just brings it home. Because of the NFL television contract, I mean, we've all heard it before. They don't have to have a single fan, and they make a profit.
Sure.
Because they've got this all down, and with the exception and the way that it's set up in terms of what they pay their players, not that many people get guaranteed money. There's 25, 30, 40 stars, whatever it is, and then a lot of the players are interchangeable other than their personalities. So it's a sport that has that sort of thing kind of built in. Players' careers aren't as long, so you're not rewarding seniority as much as you are in other sports. And so you've reached the point, and I've told this story before, but I was interviewing a guy who was trying to buy an NFL team, and he said, we have now reached the point. I'm a billionaire. I cannot buy a team by myself. I need a second billionaire. And that's the way it is. I mean, when the Carolina Panthers were for sale, that's what it took. It took a group of people who were well-heeled to be able to make it, because it is just, it's a license to print money in the basement, and that's it. And then with regard to the NBA versus, baseball, the other thing that's changed this too is that 5 years ago, I think, could have been 6, the NBA passed baseball in terms of television ratings, which then made their television deals a lot better. So now, again, they all share in that deal. The NBA is a much bigger entity than I think a lot of fans realize. It's just, and
the average age of their fan base, Cap. That's the other thing. I mean, the average age of the fan base in the NBA, I think, is in the low to mid 30s, whereas with baseball, it's like in the late 40s. So really, it's
and the NBA is much more willing to sell their personalities.
Yes,
that's part of it, Kev. But I just looked it up. $5 billion gets put into the NBA every year from China. Imagine if the NHL had $5 billion coming in from China.
Well, the $5 billion is, I think, roughly what their revenue is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's true. But and the NFL gets money from overseas as well. So
I don't think $5 billion though.
Yeah,
I don't know. You'd have to look that up. I will.
They get a lot from Europe. That's why Europe is getting a lot of games.
Yeah, I mean, to sort of explain about the NFL in that regard as well. I have a good friend who's a journalist, Linus Hugosson. He lives in Sweden. He is a Swedish hockey writer now. I actually think he's still working for the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation. But his sons play American football over in Sweden. They've got a league there, and he on Facebook he had pictures of them, and then it looks just like you would look at a college program. The guys are at practice and they're working out, and
the NFL is not getting the same, even close to the NBA, but they're gaining $40 million a game. So that's the yield for every game in Europe, but it's still nothing like $5 billion that the NBA gets.
Yeah, well, the that may be true, but there's a lot of factors that kind of go into it. But I think revenue is still king in terms of determining value. Revenue potential, like how much you can do, and I think that's where the NHL falls short, because and that's why we will continue to expand, at least in my opinion. It's because we are still a gate revenue driven league.
Sure.
So we need more gates to grow. Yeah. It's not that we're not growing in other areas, because we are. But I'm just saying they still need that gate revenue. And, we all know what happens in the playoffs when you got licensed to charge, $300, $400 a ticket to go see a playoff game. So that's where they make a lot of money as well.
So the Cincinnati Bengals are the least expensive NFL franchise, and they're $4 billion. The most expensive NHL team is the Maple Leafs at $2.12 billion. The Rangers are just lower than them. Montreal at $1.7 billion. The least expensive NBA team is $1.63 billion, which is the Pelicans. So they're almost worth as much as the third highest NHL team.
Yeah, based on their TV deal and what their split is and what they're getting from China and all that. It makes sense.
Now, here's where Alex Morello probably has an issue. According to this list, the Arizona Coyotes, they are worth less than almost all of the MLS, except for 5 teams. And they're, according to this list, they're only worth $465 million.
And I think that's probably accurate. I mean, again, they don't own an arena. If they owned an arena and it was worth something, it would help. But that raises the value instantly, but they don't own an arena.
Right. But it's, you have, I think if you're trying to sell that, at least, if I was, a real estate guy trying to sell a team, I would say, look, if you keep it here, then we'll sell it to you for $600. But if you're taking it elsewhere where you're going to make lots of money, then we want to share that. And
the interesting thing from a Buffalo perspective, since I'm here, and I don't remember what Terry Pegula bought the Sabres for, but it wasn't more. Remember, he bought it from Tom Golisano, who got it off the bankruptcy scrap heap from John Regas. I'm pretty sure he paid less than $200 million. According to this list, they're worth $635. But he paid a little over $1 billion for the Buffalo Bills, and now they're worth $4.1 billion. So, and he got them after he bought the Sabres. So, he made a killing more on the Bills than he did the Sabres. The Sabres are his pet project. He loves them because he was a fan. The Bills were an investment and a very good one. So
I would say this: the pro pickleball league's worth $10 million. It's up 100-fold. So if I'm the Coyotes, I watch out. In a couple of years, the best pickleball league, professional one, may be worth as much as the Coyotes.
Well, and Paul Holmgren is the commissioner of that, right?
I don't know if he's the commissioner. I know he's involved, and I know there's some ex-NHLers involved, and now there's trading cards coming out for him, although I don't know who's buying the trading cards right now, but for the pickleball guys, if X a trading card, I don't want that card, just as an example, because Eck wouldn't even be a rated rookie. I don't know what you would call him on a trading card for pickleball.
An all-star.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And these guys, like the Red Wings, Chris Draper is supposedly, we haven't chatted with him about it. I know he does play, is supposedly going to compete in this league. Now he already has
stand in front of the net and never leave. That's what he's going to do.
So, yeah.
Is it a dill pickleball or a bread and butter pickleball?
Yeah. Well, I like them both, so I'm covered. So, you talk about, someone that has a good idea, like the first guy that, started playing pickleball and said, let's shrink the court and it'll be mostly a standstill game. It'll be a reflex game, but it's just millions of people are just playing it. Like, there's a lot of people in my age bracket that are playing it. My wife and I have been asked to play many times. It's a game that people have been smitten with. So,
but I would say racquetball at its height was also that well played. There were tons of courts everywhere. For some reason, that died. I'm not saying pickleball is going to die, but I remember when racquetball got hot like that.
Well, I know the only people that aren't smitten for pickleball, and I learned this from the Brian Gumbel's Real Sports on HBO, are the people who live near the pickleball courts, because they make so much noise that it's to the point of distraction that they hate. They hate being near them.
One of the issues with that, as I've learned, is that there is such a demand for pickleball courts. They go well into the night. Like, people will play pickleball at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. So that's the area. And some of them are, close to residential areas. That's the issue. But, Yeah, I mean, it is pretty amazing that pickleball, has really kind of burst out into the scene and really sort of, grabbed a chunk of the market.
One last thing on the whole Arizona thing. I did listen to, John Shannon, our friend who's been on the show before, his podcast, the Bob McCown podcast, and he had Scott Burnside, who we all know, and they were talking about Arizona, and he did say that from the people that he has talked to within the league, that he does think that the Coyotes will end up in Salt Lake City. Now that was before this announcement. And, the funny thing is there hasn't even been an environmental study or any of the things.
No, this announcement,
yes,
again, they probably still have about 3 months to execute, like Kevin said, because I'm pretty sure the NHL was probably already starting to look at everything for next year. And I bet you they've got a few months here to really get this off the ground. Otherwise, it may be their last gasp.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that's why you saw a letter of intent and not a real purchase, because Marullo doesn't want to lose his money by suddenly buying a otherwise useless piece of property, to do that. So it is going to be interesting. But I like the logic of Salt Lake City because it keeps the integrity of the geography.
It does. The geography, it helps that, actually.
Right. Yeah. So it makes sense. And I also like the idea. I think the league does too. They like being in areas where it's not overrun by sports.
Right.
And like Salt Lake, this will be a really big deal.
Even basketball, while it's popular there, because they have not been good in so long, it's a chance for the NHL to really make hay in that market and become the more popular team if they have success.
Right.
Now, some news and notes, starting with Jeff Petrie, who was traded in the Erik Karlsson deal. His salary was moved to Montreal. There's been some speculation that Petrie is not going to stay long in La Belle Provence. That he will be moving on. There has been some chatter, Kev, about Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars being interested in Petrie. Now they're fairly tight against the cap, but if Montreal is willing to retain salary and make him a $2.5 to $3 million defenseman, I mean, you're talking about a defense core with Suter, with Heiskanen, with Lindell. If they add a veteran guy like Petrie as sort of a depth 4, 5, 6 guy, I mean, that's a pretty good move. I think he still has something left. I just think the salary has been the issue the last few years.
For sure, and I think this was a slick move by Montreal because I think they saw this all the way. Look, get you down to 4.69, and then we'll eat to 1.8. He's only got a couple of years left. Right. And then he goes from an untradeable guy to a guy that's desirable, to have him below an average salaried player. I mean, he's not the player he once was in terms of having kind of a two-way ability, but he still can be helpful, particularly if you kind of slot him down and ask him to play kind of a safe role. He's certainly capable of that.
Mm-hmm. Russ, what would you think if the Stars added Petrie?
I mean, the Stars seem to be able to get some of these guys and find a role, and I'm sure there's a role for Petrie. So that makes sense to me. Again, I'm just wondering when the Canadians will stop being a clearinghouse, because at some point they do have to stop being like Arizona and start trying to actually piece together a team. And this year's clearly not the year, but like, to me, it should be like next year. Like, that's when they should start to look at this, because you'll have another year of Slafkovsky to realize what he is or what he isn't.
Right.
Reinbacher, I don't know if he'll make it up there this year, but then next year is probably an anticipation of him going up there. Like, at some point, you have to see how you've been drafting and what you've been doing for the last 3-4 years, because honestly, that part of it has been a little slow for them.
Well, at this point, we don't even know if Reinbacher is going to stay in Switzerland or he's going to play in the AHL, or if he's going to, I mean, we haven't heard anything in terms.
You know what I mean? Like,
no.
And I'm not saying we should rush their guys, but what I'm saying is, for all of the picks that they've been making all these last 3 years, we're not seeing tremendous progress yet.
But here's the complicating factor with the Canadians, Russ, is the fact that they had a crap load of bad contracts when Gorton took over. They've got Gallagher, they've got Josh Anderson. They traded Edmondson. Now they've taken Petrie back, and they're going to be a clearinghouse for him. But they've got 3 or 4 contracts up front that are just boat anchors.
No, but that doesn't stop player development. You know what I mean?
No, it doesn't, but it stops them from going in free agency and signing deals.
As an example, if you look at the 2019 draft, if you take Caulfield out of that draft, so far they've gotten 44 NHL games. You're 4 years out. Like 5 years is the mark.
Yeah, though it does take longer than I think in the parity league than we anticipated.
Because
because
I'm with you on that.
Yeah, because look at the Red Wings. Like I think I've said this before, but Yzerman has done well in the draft, but he's really only got 2 guys out of his first 5 years that are playing. It just takes time. I mean, they're working with guys that were drafted in 2018 and 19, and the other guys are still en route. So it takes time.
Yeah, I mean, okay, they signed Suzuki on an extension. He's a really good young player, and we all believe in Cole Caulfield and the quality of him. But Gallagher's got 4 more years at 6.5. Josh Anderson has 4 more years at 5.5. Christian Dvorak 2 more years at 4.45. Joel Armia 2 more years at 3.4. Now they've got both ends of the Matheson Petrie deal. I'm pretty sure that they got Matheson in the deal for Petrie, and now they got Petrie back. So there's 2, not to say that that's dead money, but the players who I think have clearly seen their better days, and they've got Carey Price for 3 more years on LTIR at $10.5 million.
Right, but even if I ask a basic question, who's their starting goalie in 3 years? We don't know the answer.
Caden Primo, probably.
Maybe not. There's no set answer even for that.
Right.
Well, I mean, the Red Wings drafted a guy in the first round, but if you said, we don't really know the answer in Detroit either, who the goalie.
I would say in 3 years, Costa will be their goalie. I feel confident.
Well, I mean, you think he is, but you don't know.
No, we don't know for sure. But I'm saying there's nobody that even I can identify Primo as well that I could say where I have even a little bit of confidence. I at least have a little bit of confidence in Costa that in 2 years he could be their guy. And I'm sure that's about the time frame that they're looking at. But I'm telling you, even Montreal, they're probably going to have to go shopping even for a goalie at some point. So that's what I'm saying. It's just.
I mean, it could. I mean, although Primo's kind of. I mean, they like Primo.
Listen. I like him too, but he may only be a 1B though.
So.
Pagnotta is reporting that the Capitals are looking for a top 6 forward, a goal scorer. They're also looking to move Anthony Mantha in the final year of his deal, making $5.7 million. I mean,
he's finally been a disappointment. I didn't want to say it a few years ago because I was hoping that he would sort of mature because he had an NHL body and a great shot and everything else, but he's been disappointing.
I mean, Kev, the inconsistency of Mantha. I mean, I remember that Centennial Classic where him and Matthews were scoring like crazy in that game. And I thought, this is a guy who's going to consistently score 30, 35 goals because he had so much ability, but he just has not been able to put it all together consistently.
No, I mean, they, the Red Wings kind of grew weary of it. He's in and out. He gets hot for a while, and a lot of goal scorers go through that. That's just sort of the nature of being a top scorer. But with Mantha, it just seems like he would lose his intensity, and I think Yzerman saw that early, and he just didn't want to live with that and moved him out.
Now, in terms of the Capitals going out and getting a goal scorer, a guy like Victor Olofsson with the Sabres would be a 1-year guy possibly, but I think they're probably looking for somebody more long-term. Does that mean that they would get in on a Nylander or get in on like somebody who like Elias Lindholm, who I was going to mention, who Pagnotta also mentioned in terms of the whole situation in Calgary? I don't know what Washington would be able to offer back for guys like that. That's the problem. They have an aging core. They really don't have a lot of youngsters Russ. I mean, I don't know whether they'd be able to pull off a deal for a top score for a top 6 forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's just weird that we're hearing that they're looking for this now, this late in the game. What it tells me, where my mind goes, is that maybe they realize Nick Backstrom is like a third liner now, and maybe that's why they have to. Otherwise, I'm not sure why they have to. Well, it's just kind of odd.
Unless we've heard for over a year, Kev, that they want to trade Kuznetsov, but if they trade Kuznetsov, they're going to need to replace the goals that would that he would normally score. And I don't know how many teams would sign up for Kuznetsov because of off the ice issues and inconsistency with him too.
Yeah, I don't see them in a position. They don't have the cap readiness in order to make that kind of deal to bring in a Nylander or a Lindholm. Not if they want to keep them beyond this year, because they'd have to move Mantha or Kuznetsov or both,
right?
To make that work. And the teams that are moving those players are not taking either one of those guys.
No.
Now, Pagnotta does say that Lindholm is open to signing a long-term extension in Calgary. That's been up to for debate over the last few months, but that he wants over $9 million on a new deal, and the Flames are offering closer to what I had heard, which is around $8 million. So there's $1 million difference. Now, does that get sort of knocked off? They meet themselves in the middle. I mean, $8.5 million for Lindholm wouldn't strike me as a bad deal because he's been a pretty consistent player the last few years.
Well, and they're closer than $8 million. I've heard that today, that they were inching closer to the deal, and I think people think that is going to get done eventually. It sort of reminds me of the Larkin situation where. They were far apart, but you just had a feeling that, that it was going to kind of come together because Larkin said publicly he wanted to stay there. And I think Lindholm has sort of made it clear that he doesn't have any issues in staying in Calgary. But, I think there's always a respect factor that's just one layer below the money, where, not only do they want the money because they want the money, but they also want the respect of the money. Like, how much do you like me? So, yeah.
The question I have is, though, okay, so you signed Lindholm, let's say, and you didn't lose him, but is he making you a playoff team? They're signing these long-term deals, and I'm not sure they're a guaranteed playoff team.
It might be a situation, Russ, where if you lose him, you're guaranteed to not be a playoff team. With him and Kadri as your 1-2 punch up the middle, it's conceivable that with a couple other additions, you could be a playoff team. The goaltending is a big problem. The players that are have a year left on their contract is an issue as well. But I think you can write them off as a playoff team if Lindholm leaves for nothing.
Okay, but and I'm not saying he would leave for nothing, but I'm saying, he went 20 goals down last year. Like, sometimes guys have a little drop off, and you go from 40 to 30. And then next year you're at 32, but he dropped 20. That's a little alarming.
Well, but he lost Goudreau.
Right, but that's the thing. I'm signing him on his own now, and there is no Goudreau. Where's he getting those other 20 goals from?
He lost Goudreau and Kachuk on both wings.
Right, but again, if he's worth his money, he's got to do a little bit better. He's got to do better. If I'm paying him 8.5,
right,
64 points isn't cutting it.
I mean, that's a fair argument, to be honest with you, but I do think the other issue here is, and we can't have it both ways in the media. We can't say, oh no, well, Buffalo is done because they don't have a number 1 or number 2 center, and then say to Calgary, well, he's not worth it. So just get rid of your number 1 center. So
yeah.
But I mean, I know what you're saying. 64 points is not enough, and you do want a guy that can create stuff no matter who he has on his wing. But but there's not only a few Mario Lemieux around. So.
Right now, in the chat they were just saying that, and this was expected. The Leafs only had 2 goaltenders, Samsonov and Joseph Woll. And Wall does not have waiver exemption any longer, so he's going to be in the NHL this year.
He has to stay there, yeah.
Right? They needed a goaltender that they could send to the Marlies that was an NHL goalie, because all teams want at least 3 goaltenders. They signed Martin Jones.
There you go.
On a 1-year deal for $875. That's variable in the AHL.
He's their up and down guy.
Yeah, he's their up and down guy. So they lost Shalgren to New Jersey. So that's not. And we know Jones had a lot of wins with Seattle, but his save percentage was not. He's an NHL goaltender. He's not a particularly good NHL goaltender, but he's an NHL goaltender.
Let me ask you this: So he's getting $875 no matter where he plays?
Correct.
You know what? That's become a trend, and I'm going to call it the Hellberg rule. Hellberg last year got claimed on waivers 3 times,
right?
And it caused the Red Wings this year to get their house in order with goaltending. They gave Alex Lyon a 2-year deal where he gets paid $900,000 no matter where he plays. No one's going to claim somebody making $900,000 and so forth. So. And then Pittsburgh did that with Hellberg, of all people. They gave him money both ways, and now we see that with Toronto. And I think there's a couple other teams that have done it as well.
Yeah. So, and I will, Samsonov has had injury issues. Wall has had injury issues over the last few years. So this is a safety net. But Martin Jones, barring injury, will not be on the Leafs.
Well, at least they have one goalie now that has played in the Stanley Cup, so that's good.
Thank you very much. Just to end the show here, today is the 35th anniversary of the 35th anniversary of Wayne Gretzky being traded from the Edmonton Oilers to the LA Kings. Now that, we've talked about this before on the show, but we cannot sort of underestimate the effect that this had on the league, Kev, because, LA was a decent franchise, fairly successful, but not, during the Jack Kent Cook era in LA, but didn't make a big splash until they got a superstar like Gretzky there, and really the growth of the league in the West and the Southwest is directly attributable to Wayne Gretzky and that trade.
Well, I think all of this. I think the expansion of the NHL into the Sun Belt, the fact that the American program is taking players out of. It may eventually have happened, but I think he expedited it. He made the game cool in the United States. He was doing commercials. Madison Avenue was interested in hockey player for the first time, and all of that, roller hockey took off. And so he created, all of a sudden California was a hockey hotbed. Even the Western Hockey League was taking players out of California to play in the Western Hockey League. So, he's done all this, and, it wasn't just his talent, it was his personality as well. He was a great ambassador for the game, and, it really changed everything. I think the players at the time realized that, the impact that he was having as well, that it was suddenly a whole different game when he was in the United States.
And Russ, Wayne Gretzky was on General Hospital, or Young and the Restless. He was in Young and the Restless.
I was going to say he wasn't on General Hospital.
It was Young and the Restless. Sorry, but
here's the funny thing. I look at what Edmonton got, and you knew Wayne Gretzky was going. It really wasn't bad, but the part that I've really not seen fully vetted out is they had an opportunity because they got, first round picks in 89, 91, 93. In 89, their first round pick was brutal. It was Jason Sewell. So there's a miss, right there, unless they traded that Gretzky first rounder for something, but I don't know. In 91, they let's see. Now they did have Tyler Wright and Martin Roshinsky. Like it's, okay, decent, nothing fantastic. And then in 93,
Jimmy Carson and Jelena and
No, right. But Jason Arnott and Nick Stagehar. So yeah, part of this is on the Edmonton Oilers. Had they drafted better, they could have made a lot more out of this trade, because the player part of it for them wasn't bad. Jimmy Carson was a really good scorer. And if they would have hit a home run on 2 out of those 3 drafts, they'd have been a lot better off, but they just didn't.
All right. Great show, guys. We'll be back on Friday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, for Kevin Allen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.